There's a question many people ask themselves, especially after dealing with a narcissistic person. What is their real weakness? Behind the ostentatious confidence, the charm, and the apparent control, there hides a deep fragility, invisible to most, yet devastating for those who live it from within. Today, we'll explore that weakness together, not with judgment, but with psychological awareness and empathy. To understand does not mean to justify, but rather to free ourselves from the power that unconsciousness can hold over us. The term narcissism comes from the myth of Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection in the water. In psychology, however, narcissism is not simply vanity. It's a complex construct that involves identity, the need for recognition, and the regulation of self-esteem. According to the DSM-5, narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, beginning in early adulthood and manifesting across various contexts. But not all narcissists are the same. Otto Kernberg spoke of malignant narcissism, a more rigid and destructive form, while Heinz Kohut saw narcissism as a failure in the development of the self, a desperate attempt to maintain internal cohesion. Behind the mask of grandiosity lies a fragile self. The true weak point of a narcissist is not what they show, but what they fear: shame and humiliation. The narcissist constantly oscillates between two poles: the illusion of being special and superior, and the deep fear of being insignificant or unlovable. Psychological studies, such as those by Pincus and Lukavitsky or Miller and colleagues, show that narcissists, especially the vulnerable kind, react with rage or withdrawal when faced with a narcissistic injury, that is, when their ideal image is questioned. In other words, their Achilles heel is confrontation with reality, the mirror that reveals their dependence on external approval. The narcissist builds a world in which they are always the center, because outside that role they feel lost. This need for control stems from an original wound, often a childhood where love was conditional on performance, or where the child was seen not for who they were, but for what they did. As Kohut explains, the narcissist's grandiose self is a fragmented one, constantly seeking validation to avoid collapse. That's why they react so poorly to criticism, emotional distance, or loss of attention. They perceive these not as normal experiences, but as threats to their psychological survival. This is also why they alternate between seduction and devaluation. They need to ensure they never lose control over the other. When the narcissist feels rejected, criticized, or ignored, the pain they experience is deep. But instead of acknowledging it, they transform it into anger, contempt, or manipulation. It's not a conscious choice, it's a defense. Their real weakness, therefore, lies in their inability to tolerate vulnerability. Behind every act of superiority hides the terror of not being enough. As psychoanalyst Alice Miller wrote in The Drama of the Gifted Child, many narcissistic adults were once children who learned early to deny their needs in order to be loved. Their apparent strength is, in truth, a shield. Understanding a narcissist's weak point isn't about hurting them, but about freeing yourself from their power and reclaiming your balance. When we recognize that behind their mask lies an old pain, we can stop taking responsibility for it. Real strength doesn't lie in trying to change the narcissist, but in setting healthy boundaries, protecting our self-esteem, and cultivating relationships based on mutual respect and empathy. Remember, awareness is your freedom, and the greatest weakness of those who live through appearance is meeting someone who lives in authenticity. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's the gateway to authenticity. And yet, despite their difficulty in forming deep connections, some narcissists begin a journey of awareness. It's not easy, because the first step toward change is recognizing their own fragility, something their defensive structure resists at all costs. However, in therapy, particularly through psychodynamic or relational approaches, some gradually manage to reconnect with their repressed emotions. As Otto Kernberg observed, only when a narcissistic patient experiences being accepted even in their vulnerability can they begin to integrate the fragmented parts of the self. It's a long journey, but possible when there's at least a small spark of genuine motivation to change. For those in a relationship with a narcissist, the key is not to fix them, but to protect yourself. Setting clear boundaries, recognizing emotional manipulation, and refusing to play the guilt game are essential tools of psychological self-defense. Those who live close to a narcissist, whether in a romantic, family, or professional context, often develop unjustified guilt or even emotional dependency. Psychological literature, particularly the work of Wendy Behary, offers effective strategies for communicating assertively while preserving one's dignity and well-being. The key is to avoid falling into the trap of trying to heal the other. Change can only come from within. Ultimately, recognizing the weak point of a narcissist allows us to see that their strength is only apparent, and that behind every act of control or arrogance hides a deep fear. The fear of not being loved for who they are, but only for what they represent. This awareness can transform our perspective. We are no longer victims of invisible power, but clear-sighted and compassionate observers of human fragility. Because, in the end, we all need to be seen, but only those who accept their own imperfection can truly love and be loved. In an era where image is everything, and social media amplifies the need for validation, narcissistic traits seem more widespread than ever. However, not all narcissistic behaviors indicate a personality disorder. There is such a thing as healthy narcissism, the ability to value oneself and recognize one's worth without losing empathy for others. The challenge of our modern world is distinguishing between authentic self-esteem and the compulsive pursuit of validation. As psychologist Jean Twenge, co-author of The Narcissism Epidemic, explains, we live in a culture that rewards appearance over substance, making emotional awareness and humility more essential than ever. On a personal level, understanding narcissism doesn't just mean defending yourself from it, it also means reflecting on your own inner dynamics. To some extent, we all need to feel seen and appreciated. But when that need becomes the only way to feel alive, dependence on image is born. Cultivating authenticity, accepting one's limits, and learning to ask for help are the natural antidotes to pathological narcissism. Psychotherapy, mindfulness, and genuine human connection can all help rebuild a more stable, compassionate sense of self. Finally, we must remember that behind every narcissistic person, behind every mask of grandiosity or control, there is a wounded human being, afraid of rejection. It's not about forgiving those who hurt us, but about understanding so that we can free ourselves. When we stop taking their reactions personally and see the fear that drives them, we reclaim our inner peace. Conscious empathy does not excuse, it enlightens. And when we learn to look at the shadow with understanding, we truly become free. Free to choose, to love, and to never again let ourselves be defined by another's pain.